This little man is Eryx. Eryx is a Kenyan Sand Boa, so he is from Africa. And unlike some of my other desert-dwelling snakes, Eryx is a burrower. He's what you call fossorial. That means he likes to be down under the ground. He hates being on top of the ground. So he's probably pretty mad at me right now because he does not like to be above the ground. And as soon as I pick him up and hold him, he wants to get back down below as fast as possible. Now he's a real fat-bodied snake. See how fat he is? Look at his tail. His tail is almost indistinguishable from his head. Isn't that funny? And there are reasons for that. Part of that is because when he's under the sand and his body is poking up, maybe his head or his tail, hopefully a predator will look at his tail and think, oh, there's his head. I think I'll attack his tail. See how similar they are? And that's kind of a defense mechanism they have where they're hoping that a predator would try to attack at his tail and think that's the head rather than his actual head. Now, I don't know if you can see this on the camera, but his skin should be a bright orange and a dark brown, but it looks really dull right now. That's because he is almost ready to shed. Just about any day, he is due for a shed. All this old skin on top has died, and he needs to shed off his old skin to reveal his new skin below. And so when a snake is about ready to shed, they get really dull like this, and they also get really angry. They get cranky, and they stop eating, and they don't want to be touched. In his case, he's actually being really friendly, which is kind of nice. But see that beautiful pattern? And so Kenyan Sand Boas are from Kenya, which is in Africa, and they love to burrow in the sand. And so when I have him in his tank, I don't have him in sand, but I have him in something like sand. I almost never see him, but when I hold a mouse right above his head and just touch it to his nose, he'll jump out of the sand and grab that mouse and pull it right down under the sand. And that's how Kenyan Sand Boas feed. They sit and wait for hours, days, maybe even weeks under the sand for something to come along on top, something that scurries, and then they grab him and they pull him down underneath. And again, I don't know if you can see this exactly, but his nose is really flat. It's flat and it's broad. And his eyes are not on the sides of his head, they're on the top of his head. So that's because as a burrowing snake, he wants to be able to keep his eyes close to the top. So if he is like swimming around in the sand, sometimes he'll pop his head up, but not too much, just a little tiny bit, and take a look. And so the fact that his eyes are on top of his head helps him be able to just pop his head up a little bit and then go right back down under. Kind of like if you've ever seen an alligator or a crocodile, they've got eyes on the top of their head and they'll just pop their little eyes up and then they'll go right back down under. He's exactly the same way. And he's got this real flat head and this flat nose because he uses that to burrow in the sand. And it's really fun to watch. If you set him down on dirt or sand, give him about 10 seconds and he'll burrow right into the ground. So he's from Kenya. He's pretty fat-bodied, and eventually he's not going to get very long, but he will get super fat, like this fat, maybe even fatter. Kenyan Sand Boas, they're what we call like a stubby snake. They don't have a long tail, obviously, a really fat tail, and they just grow bigger. They don't necessarily grow longer, but he's pretty friendly, but he is feeling very uncomfortable right now because he wants to go back underground. But see, he's still sniffing the air. He's using his Jacobson's organ and his tongue to try and taste the chemicals in the air and figure out where's my food, where's my home, where's my water. So that's Eryx. By the way, Kenyan Sand Boas make great pets. If you ever wonder, what kind of a snake should I get for a starter snake, maybe your first snake ever? I'm a big fan of Kenyan Sand Boas. Obviously, he's very friendly. He's very small. So he fits in a really small tank, and they're just simple and easy to care for. They don't need an elaborate tank, and you just give them kind of a tank full of substrate like sand or something like it, and they're happy campers. And they're generally, they like being held. They're pretty friendly, and he doesn't bite me. So if you're thinking like, what's a pretty good snake for a starter, like what would be the first snake that I should have if I've never had one before, I think a Kenyan Sand Boa is a great choice. Bye, Eric.